Okay, look at our next question for cos squared x minus 1. So here you just need to remember the steps. If you follow the steps, it doesn't matter how complicated the question looks. You follow the steps, you will always get to the solution. Now here again, we should note that x should be an angle between 0 and 2 pi. Okay, remember what the square brackets mean. It means 0 is included and 2 pi is included. Okay, so first thing we did was to take everything without x on one side, everything with cos or sine x on the other side. So to do this, I will have 4 cos squared x is equal to 1, and then I divide by 4 on both sides, divide by 4, divide by 4. So I have cos squared x is equal to 1 over 4. Okay, now I need to make cos x the subject. Now remember what this means, cos squared x. This means the same thing as this, cos x squared is equals to 1 over 4, because this is just a shorter way of writing this. They mean exactly the same thing. And when we want to get rid of a square, what do? We take plus or minus the square root on both sides. So I will take square root there. This is equals to plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4. So I will be left with cos x is equals to the square root of 1 over 4, which is half, the positive one, or I will have cos x is equals to the negative square root of 1 over 4, which is half. These values, you can get them on your calculator. It's not difficult to do. So now that I have these two equations, I will follow the procedure. I'm just going to separate my page in two. So I will follow the procedures. So the first step is done because I have cos x is equal to something, cos x is equal to something. Next thing I need to do is my quadrants. So here, this is positive. So cos is positive in the first quadrant, and cos is also positive in the fourth quadrant. Okay, so these are my quadrants. Then from there I need to find my reference angle, and to find my reference angle I say theta is equals to cos inverse of a half. You notice I'm not writing as much as I did with the previous ones. That is because with the more you practice, the easier it gets. So I have cos inverse of half. This I can just do on my calculator. This is cos inverse of half. I get 60, but you need to remember the question said x must be from 0 to 2 pi. This is in radians, so the answer for theta that you give should also be in radians. So here I will say theta is equals to 60 degrees, which is equals to pi over 3 radians. So I have my reference angle. Then to get the solution, I need to work out what the angles are in the first and the fourth quadrant. So in the first quadrant, x is just equal to theta, because in the first quadrant the angle is equal to the reference angle. And if it is in the fourth quadrant, then x is equal to 2 pi minus theta. So if x is equals to theta, this means x is equal to pi over 3. And if x is in the fourth quadrant, then x is equals to 2 pi minus pi over 3. And this we can do on your calculator. You have 2, we can put the pi there as well. It says 2 pi minus, where is fraction? Okay, minus pi over 3. Okay, and there you can see the answer. Can you see it? It is 5 pi over 3. So this is 5 pi over 3. So I have two solutions. First one, x is pi over 3, and then I have 5 pi over 3. And that was the first part of the equation, which is this one. And now I need to do the same thing for that one. So this one, I need to determine the quadrants. So this is negative. And then I ask myself, in what quadrant is cos negative? cos is negative in the second quadrant, and it is negative in the third quadrant. Okay, so now that I know it's negative in the second and the third quadrant, I go ahead and work out my reference angle. So I will say theta is equals to cos inverse of a half. So remember how we work out the reference angle. We ignore the sign and then we take cos inverse of that. So that's why I say theta over here and not x. So I have theta is equal to cos inverse of half, and this we already know is pi over 3 radians. Remember, we're working with radians, so the answer you give should be in radians. Okay, then after I know my quadrants, my reference angle, I need to write my solutions. So the solutions, we said in the second quadrant. If x is in the second quadrant, the definition of an angle in the second quadrant is pi minus theta. And if it is in the third quadrant, then the definition is pi plus theta. Okay, we know what theta is, so I have pi minus pi over 3. This we can just do on our calculator. Okay, so when you see it, I have pi minus pi over 3. When I work that out, it is 2 pi over 3. So this is 2 pi over 3. And then here for the third quadrant, this is pi plus pi over 3. Then again, you do this on your calculator. And pi plus pi over 3 is 4 pi over 3. So this is 4 pi over 3. Okay, and leave the exact values. There are some calculators that cannot write it in this form that I have over here, 4 pi over 3, and they will give you a decimal. Do not give your answer as a decimal. It must be with a pi like that one. Okay, so now I have all my solutions. Like we said, we just need to list them. So I will do that over here. So I will say x is equal to, and I say please, as a request, write them in order. It's always easier when you're marking them. So we look at the solutions from cos x, from cos x is equal to a half. My solutions were pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. And then from cos x is equals to minus half, I had 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3. So I write them in ascending order from the smallest one to the biggest one. Okay, so the smallest one is pi over 3. And then the next one is 2 pi over 3. And then I have 4 pi over 3. And then I have 5 pi over 3. And then just like that, I am done. Very simple.